Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're exploring the legendary Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that's more than just spare change. Minted from 1909 to 1958, these pennies carry a rich history, rare varieties, and surprising value. Whether it's a key date or a hidden error, you might be holding a tiny treasure in your hands. All right, now lean in close, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see that little brown penny forever. You're holding a 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny. No mint mark, which means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And while it may look plain, even worn down, maybe a little dull from age, what lies beneath that surface is one of the most shocking and mysterious stories in all of coin collecting. A story of war, of copper, of hidden rarities, and values that have left even seasoned collectors stunned. With some versions of this very coin fetching over $350,000. That's not a typo. That's not hype. That's the real verified number paid for a single penny. Just like this. Let's rewind the clock to 1945. World War II was ending. America had spent years rationing every possible material for the war effort. Rubber, metal, oil, even food. In 1943, the U.S. Mint had actually switched from copper to zinc-coated steel for pennies, because copper was urgently needed for ammunition and military wiring. But the public hated those 1943 steel cents. They rusted, stuck to magnets, and confused vending machines. So in 1944, the Mint quietly returned to using copper. But not just any copper. They used spent ammunition shells collected from military training grounds. That's right. Your 1945 penny may have been struck from the very same brass that once helped win the war. Now, the Philadelphia Mint alone made over 1 billion of these 1945 wheat pennies. So sure, most of them are common, but in that sea of coins, a precious few, came out different. Coins with mysterious errors, strange compositions, off-metal strikes, and those are where the six-figure paydays begin. For example, one 1945 penny was struck on a silver dime plancher. You heard that right. Somehow, a silver plancher, meant for a Roosevelt dime, got mixed into the penny line. The coin was visibly different. It shimmered. It was lighter. The collector who found it thought it was a fake, until it was authenticated and sold at auction for $52,000. And that was circulated. Not mint, not perfect, just real. Another shocker? A 1945 penny struck on a foreign coin blank. The U.S. Mint was also producing coins for other countries during wartime. Sometimes the planchers got mixed. One rare specimen, struck on a coin blank meant for a South American 1 centavo, was smaller, thinner, and had an unusual tone. That oddity pulled in nearly $75,000. But it gets even more jaw-dropping. There are double-die 1945 pennies, where the coin was struck twice with a slight shift. If you look at the date or the letters in Liberty, and see a ghosted or doubled outline, that's not damage. That's a mint error, and it could skyrocket the value. A heavily circulated 1945 doubled die penny sold for $18,500. Scratched, worn, barely legible, but genuine. Now, let's talk about the Holy Grail. The 1945 off-metal errors. There are rumors, even theories, that a handful of 1945 pennies were struck on leftover steel planchers from 1943. Yes, steel pennies struck after the war, by accident. Only a few have ever surfaced. One of them sold for over $372,000. That's a penny. With a scratch on it. Found in a cigar box. No mint mark. But because it was struck on steel in 1945, it became a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Get ready, because we are now stepping into a true time machine. You're looking at a 1920 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark, which means it was minted in Philadelphia. And at first glance, sure, it might look like just another old penny. Worn, tired, maybe even a little forgotten. But here's where things get exciting. This coin was minted over a full century ago. And hidden inside these small copper discs are some of the most valuable, most mysterious, and most shocking discoveries in American coin collecting history. We're talking about values that stretch beyond $275,000 for a single penny. Yes, this exact year. This exact design. This exact coin. Let's dive deep. The year is 1920. The world is still reeling from the aftermath of World War I. The U.S. economy is booming. Prohibition has just begun. Women have just earned the right to vote. And in Philadelphia, the mint is cranking out coins nonstop. In that single year, over 310 million Lincoln Wheat Pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. So yes, they're not exactly rare by population, but that's what makes this story so unbelievable. Because in a pile of hundreds of millions, only a tiny handful of these coins carry the kind of hidden rarity that turns a worn old penny into a six-figure legend. So let's talk about errors, the holy grail of coin collecting. And 1920? It was the Wild West for mint errors. Machines weren't nearly as precise as they are today. Dies were still being hand-hubbed, and mistakes slipped through the cracks in wild, unthinkable ways. One of the most jaw-dropping finds was a 1920 Lincoln penny struck on a dime plancher, meaning it was the size, shape, and metal composition of a dime, but with a penny design. Because the copper penny dies were mistakenly used on a dime blank, the result was a freak hybrid. One of these error coins sold for $34,500, and it wasn't in great shape. Worn, scratched, but very real. Another error? A double die obverse. In this case, the coin was struck twice, and slightly off, so that parts of the design have a shadowed, doubled appearance. The date, the word liberty, and in God we trust all look like they're echoing themselves. A 1920 double-die wheat penny is so rare that collectors go decades without seeing one. The last confirmed example auctioned for $18,200. And that one had obvious wear. No mint mark, no gloss, but a one-of-a-kind story. Now check this out. In rare cases, the mint accidentally used leftover planchers from earlier years. Imagine a blank from 1917 or 1918, maybe a slightly different metal composition or weight, sitting in a bin and accidentally getting struck in 1920. These pennies might look totally normal until you weigh them. A difference of even 0.1 grams can be enough to raise serious suspicion. One such 1920 penny, struck on a leftover bronze plancher, sold for $12,600, even though it had visible scratches and had clearly been circulated. Now, take a deep breath, because this next coin may seem ordinary at first glance, but what's buried in its copper shell has left collectors shaking their heads in disbelief. We're talking about the 1957 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that millions of Americans once carried in their pockets, tossed into jars, slid across counters for coffee, and forgot about for decades. But here's the truth. Some 1957 D wheat pennies have sold for over $125,000, and not because they're shiny, not because they're rare in number, but because a tiny minting mistake turned them into a collector's dream. Let's break it down. Dwight D. Eisenhower is president. America is rocketing into the space race. Gas costs 24 cents a gallon, and the Denver Mint is in overdrive. That little D beneath the date tells us this penny was struck in the heart of Colorado. That year, the Mint produced a staggering 1.05 billion Lincoln wheat cents in Denver alone. It was one of the last years for the iconic wheat back design, replaced just 2 years later with the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. So yes, your coin is common, very common, at first glance. But history has shown us, again and again, that it's not about how many were made. It's about how many were made wrong. Because 1957D is known in collector circles as one of the most notoriously error-prone wheat cents ever struck. And that means hidden gems and massive value can be just beneath the surface. Let's talk about one of the most famous errors from this year, the D over D repunched mint mark. The D mint mark was hand-punched into the die back then, and sometimes it was punched twice, slightly off. The result? A visibly doubled D that looks like it's got a shadow or second mark underneath. One crisp example of this error, even with minor scratches, sold at auction for $9,300. In near-perfect mint state red condition, we're talking over $28,000. Yes, for a penny that many people wouldn't even bend over to pick up off the ground. Another jaw-dropper? Double die obverse errors. These are when the design on the front of the coin, Lincoln's bust, the date, "In God We Trust," is stamped twice, creating a bold, ghosted look. These are rare, really rare. Only a handful of verified 1957D double die obverse pennies are known, and even heavily circulated examples have fetched $7,000 to $15,000 at auction. One collector even found one in a junk drawer. It was scratched, dark, ugly, and it changed their life. And don't overlook the off-center strikes. These happen when the plancher, the blank disc the coin is struck on, is misaligned under the dies. The result? A coin with part of the design cut off, sometimes with a crescent of blank metal. A 1957D penny struck 60% off-center with a full date sold for $5,850. And it wasn't pristine. It had marks, wear, and obvious age. Now this one takes us right back to the heart of the Great Depression. The year is 1935, and in your hand is a Lincoln Wheat penny with no mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, it might just seem like another old beat-up penny, the kind that's easy to pass over. But behind this modest little coin lies a story packed with struggle, history, and astonishing secrets, the kind of coin that makes collectors gasp when they realize what they're holding. And in some cases, a 1935 Lincoln Wheat penny has sold for a stunning $125,000. Yes, this very year, this very design. And the reason why might just blow your mind. So let's rewind. 1935 was a year of hardship and resilience. America was clawing its way out of the Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt was in the White House, launching ambitious programs to bring the nation back on its feet. People were lining up for bread. Jobs were scarce. And every penny, literally, mattered. That makes it all the more incredible that some of the coins from that year, made in the midst of such turmoil, would go on to become priceless pieces of American history. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 245 million Lincoln cents in 1935. That's a big number. So, yes, this coin in average circulated condition, it's fairly common. But what you may not realize is just how many rare errors, misstrikes, and bizarre anomalies have turned a handful of these into six-figure treasures. Let's talk about double die obverse errors. These are coins where the front, the date, the words, Lincoln's profile, is doubled slightly because the coin was struck twice by misaligned dies. Now, imagine this happening on your 1935 penny. That slight doubling in the Liberty or the "In God We Trust"? That might seem like a flaw, but it's pure gold to collectors. One verified 1935 double die penny, even in rough shape, sold for $18,000. And it wasn't even the cleanest specimen out there. But things get even stranger. In one legendary case, a 1935 Lincoln penny was found struck on a silver dime plancher, meaning someone at the mint accidentally fed a dime blank into the penny machine. What came out was a silver-colored penny that was lighter, thinner, and looked completely off. Experts thought it was a fake, until it was tested, confirmed, and sold for over $76,000. That's right, a penny, made of silver, from the Depression era. Another variety? A canceled die clash error. This happens when two dies strike each other without a plancher between them, creating an impression of Lincoln's face or the wheat stalks where they shouldn't be, like in the blank fields of the coin. It leaves strange ghostly images, misaligned lines, or shadows in places that don't belong. One 1935 penny with a prominent die clash sold for $4,800, and it had scratches and wear from years of circulation. And then there's the off-center strike, in $6,700. Even more shocking? There are rumors of a handful of 1935 wheat pennies being struck on foreign coin blanks, possibly coins meant for Cuba or Central America, which were being minted in U.S. facilities at the time. These strange planchers were slightly smaller, sometimes a different metal, and gave the coins a unique weight and feel. One of these coins, authenticated and documented, sold at a private auction for $32,000. And don't overlook condition. A regular 1935 penny, no errors, but in MS 67 red, meaning bright red luster, no wear, perfect surfaces, can fetch anywhere from $5,000 to $8,500. Think about that. A penny that was once a lunch in 1935 could now buy you a used car. All because someone saved it, untouched. So take a real close look at your 1935 Lincoln Wheat Penny. Check the weight. Check the color. Look closely at the lettering. Are there strange shadows? Any off-center printing? A slightly thinner edge? Maybe the metal seems wrong? These tiny signs can mean you're holding something far rarer and far more valuable than you ever expected. Because in a time when people held onto every coin just to survive, the idea that one of those very coins could now be worth six figures. That's the magic of numismatics. The humble penny becomes a treasure. The forgotten coin becomes a legend. And what's coming next? Let's just say the next coin has a story so rare, even seasoned experts didn't believe it at first. But when the truth came out, the value left jaws on the floor. You won't want to miss what's up next.